Hello, everybody. My name is Zach from Start Abroad. Thank you so much for attending tonight. We're going to give everyone another minute or two to log on to the call, and then we're going to get started. Hey, Sanla, it's good to see you. Hi, Mary. Hi, Deborah. Thank you guys so much for joining. I want to say that this is hey, Channing. Nice to see you again. This is something new that we're trying. So these Ask Me Anything live events. This is a new technology for me, and I am terrible at technology. So I apologize in advance for any hiccups, but hopefully we can provide you guys some good information today. All right, we're getting some people logged on. It's nice to see that there's people from all over the US. Thank you guys so much for your time and for joining. I believe you can add questions just in this chat. I'm going to do my best to get to everything. A lot of people had submitted questions beforehand too, so I'm going to start with those, and if we have time, we'll get to the other questions from this chat. Well, why don't we just get started? I think we have a lot to get to, and we only have about an hour. So I think I've spoken with many of you, or you may be familiar with us, but my name is Zach. I'm a co-founder of Start Abroad. We are an international relocation company that offers concierge services to several countries, but one of our main countries is Costa Rica, and we live in Costa Rica ourselves. We started a family here. We've bought a home here, and we love living here. And so I'm excited to share more about the logistics of getting down here, some of the stuff on the personal side. I'm happy to share more about our story. I'm originally from South Florida, lived all over. I was in the Peace Corps in the Dominican Republic after college, and then went to grad school for international development. And I was working for an NGO that worked with farmers in Kenya. And that's where Anna and I met. And she's an international HR professional, so it's more than 15 years experience helping people move all over the world. We had moved each so many times ourselves that we always wished that there was somebody that could just make the process easy and smooth. So when you get to move to Costa Rica or you get to move to another country, it should be the most exciting time of your life. And instead, it often becomes very stressful and overwhelming. And so we always wish that somebody could just hold our hands and take us through that process. And when we didn't find it, we decided that with our personal experience and Anna's professional experience, we could help people. And so we launched Start Abroad about 4 years ago, and I've been living in Costa Rica for over 3 years and love it. And so I'm really excited to share more information and hopefully help some of the attendees here make this move as smooth and efficient as possible. Let me know if you have any more questions about me or Start Abroad. I'm happy to answer. But in the meantime, why don't we just go ahead and jump into some questions? So obviously, I'm going to just be talking a lot. I'm going to do my best to go slowly and clearly, but if you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to throw them in the chat, and we're going to get to them as we can. The first question is there a retiree type visa? What are the requirements regarding time in country? I wanted to use this opportunity to talk more about visas in general. And maybe we can take a step back and start with, we get a lot of questions from people thinking about moving abroad, or especially since the election. I want an exit plan, but I don't know where to start. So why don't we start with where we recommend starting, and then we can dig into these visa options. We recommend starting with, where do you want to be? It sounds very obvious, but I'm a firm believer in cultural fit. Sometimes you go to a place and you say, "Oh, I want this. This feels like home." And sometimes you go to a place and you say, "This feels like a wonderful place to spend a week for vacation, but I couldn't envision living here." So the first step in any plan we recommend is to visit and try to take off the vacation classes, because living in a place is very different from taking a 7-day vacation on the beach. So what you want to do on your exploratory trip is really replicate what it would be like to live there. Run your errands, do your chores. If you're going to work remotely, work. Really get a sense of what it's going to be like. Once you've decided, yes, I want to live in Costa Rica, then the next question is, okay, well, what are my options to do so legally? And let's get into the visa situation with that framework. So there's four kind of main visa, there's three main routes for Americans and Canadians and Brits that want to legally come to Costa Rica. The first one that many people have heard of is the tourist visa. So what's really nice as US and is US, Canadian, and UK nationals or European nationals, you're allowed to just come to Costa Rica. You can show up. It's called the tourist visa, but it's actually you just show up. And they can give you up to 180 days. It's ultimately up to the immigration agent that processes you through immigration. They can give you up to 180 days, but they can also give you 3 days. They can also give you 90 days. Normally, they'll give you 180 days, but you might get an ornery agent or somebody that doesn't like the cut of your jib that day, and they'll give you less. So it's really important if you're coming to Costa Rica is after you go through customs, look at the stamp in your passport. It's going to say how many days they give you. Do not overstay that. If they give you 90 days, you have to leave before 90 days. And you can either go back to the US or you can make what's called a border run. This is not my legal recommendation, but a lot of people do it. And so you can literally just hop across the border in Nicaragua or Panama. Panama, you have to be there for a little longer than Nicaragua. You hop across the border and you come back, and as long as they don't mind, the agent that's processing you will give you another 90 to 180 days. There's a lot of people that do this, and there's a lot of people that have done this long term. So it's doable. There's non-zero risk, especially if you bought a home or if you have a child in school or you have pets. There is a chance that they look at your passport and you've done a few border runs and they say, no, you're border running, and the agent's in a bad mood and they don't let you back in. So it's a non-zero risk, but the risk is low. But I'd want you to know that that is a risk. It also doesn't come with any benefits, and we'll talk about the benefits of these other visas. But just to know that a lot of people do it and coming on a tourist visa, and so that's something that people do. One thing to know is if you're going to come on a tourist visa, and this is true even if you're coming to Costa Rica to submit a temporary residency, because you're arriving on a tourist visa, is you need an exit ticket. You probably want to make it within 90 days of your leave because that's a fairly standard time for them to give you. So what you need is either a bus ticket showing you going to Panama, or you need a flight itinerary showing that you're leaving Costa Rica. You may never be asked for this, but you might also be asked for this. And if you don't have it, they might make you stand in line and buy one, or they might reject you from coming in. That's the tourist visa. Let me know if you have any questions about the tourist visa in the comments. I believe I can see everyone's comments, but again, new to this technology, so might not be the case. I apologize if that's not the case. Okay. Other visa types. Temporary residencies. So temporary residencies, there's three main ones. The first is called the investor visa. So that requires you to buy property or buy a business. Hey, Marcy, nice to see you. Sorry, Marcy, we're old friends. Temporary residency. So the investor visa requires you to invest in a property or a business of at least $150,000. With that, you buy the property, you have proof that you bought the property, then you submit your application. And that one takes the longest of these three temporary residencies that we're going to talk about. It takes about 12 months to be awarded the visa typically. The next one is called the rentista. The rentista, there's a few ways to go about it, but basically you need to show that you have $60,000. You can get what's called a term certificate from a US bank for $60,000. Or you can also buy bonds with a Costa Rican bank in the Costa Rican stock market for $60,000. We don't recommend that. So if you're going to get a term certificate from a US bank, what you're going to need to do then is transfer $2,500 a month into a Costa Rican bank over a 2-year period. The third most common temporary residency is called pensionado. That is if you have a source of fixed income of at least $1,000 a month. So Social Security, disability, a pension, all those will work. For the pensionado, you already need to be drawing that fixed income source. So in other countries, maybe you can say, well, I'm going to be eligible for Social Security in 3 years. here's a letter. In Costa Rica, that doesn't work. So you already need to be drawing from that fixed income source. And we basically show, one, that you are eligible and that you have bank statements demonstrating you're receiving that income. Temporary residencies, all three of those, they're all very similar in terms of how you apply, and we'll talk more about that. They're all very similar in terms of benefits. What's different is how you qualify. So I just gave you the three different ways to qualify. So there's the investor, the rentista, and the pensionado. In terms of process, you have to apply from Costa Rica. What you need to do is secure certain documents from the US before you come. That includes apostilled FBI background checks. Hey, Loretta. Yeah, please add anything that you have. Loretta and Jackie are concierge clients of ours. So there's a list of documents that you need, and they're also actually going through the pensionado process as we speak. They're coming in January to submit their applications. So you want to secure certain documents in the US. These include apostilled FBI background checks. You're also going to need, if you're coming with a spouse, you need an apostilled marriage certificate. If you're going to bring a child under 18, you're going to need an apostilled birth certificate. And there's a host of other documents, but those are the main ones. It's an important thing to clarify. What is an apostille? This trips up a lot of people. An apostille is basically the equivalent of getting a notarization for a document that you're going to use in the US. But you need an apostille when you're going to use a US document or Canadian document or European document in another country. So all these documents need to be apostilled because it's basically a stamp of legitimacy for these legal documents. The apostille process can be a bit of a pain in the butt. It can take a little while. You can do it yourself, and a lot of our clients do, and we would give you guidance on how to do it. You can also pay companies to expedite the process. So in many cities in the US, you can pay a company like $100, $120 to expedite the process for you. If you do DIY it, it can take a few weeks to a month to get. So it depends on your timeline. So you're going to apply for a temporary residency. You will have secured your documents in the US. You will come down to Costa Rica. You're going to block off a half a day to a day to meet with an immigration attorney. We work with a great one. And then so if you'd like to be connected with an immigration attorney, reach out to me and we can set up a call with him. You meet with the immigration attorney and their team for a half a day. There's a few things they're going to do. You're going to give them power of attorney. They're going to take you to the police station because you have to give the Costa Rican police your fingerprints. They're going to submit your application for you. And then your application goes under process. For the rentista and the pensionado, it takes about 8 to 10 months for approval. And for the investor, it's been taking like 12 months. So once you're approved, you have to start paying into the Caja system, which is Costa Rican Social Security. The amount that you're going to pay into Caja depends on how you qualified. So if you qualified with something like the rentista or the pensionado, it's going to be 7 to 11% of your stated income. Cece, thanks for your question. I will get to that. That's a great question. So 7 to 11% of your stated income. For the investor, it depends on the price of your property. What I will say, though, is that a good immigration attorney can help you minimize the amount that you have to pay into Caja. So work with an immigration attorney. You will have to pay into Caja. It is mandatory. But the benefit is that you get access to the public healthcare system. And there's a few other benefits. We'll talk more about the Caja public healthcare system. But that's one big benefit. There are several other benefits of these temporary residencies. Keep in mind that in Costa Rica, there is a difference between what is technically law and what is implemented. So even though some of these are technically law, in practice, not all of them are achievable. But let me read you the list of benefits as written in law, and I'll explain what's actually achievable and what's not. So here's the list. There's a one-time only tax exemption on the import of household goods. So once you've been awarded one of your 3 temporary residencies, Costa Rica has really high import duties on a lot of things. And so you get an exemption when you're importing household goods for that first time after you've been awarded your visa and you're moving to Costa Rica. Beneficiaries may import up to 2 vehicles duty-free for personal or family use. There's a catch here. So everybody salivates the prospect of this benefit because cars in Costa Rica are really expensive and duties are very high. The catch is, one, they've only recently been allowing people to do it. You need to have the visa in your hand before you can even start the process. And if you import a car, you're basically not allowed to sell it. So you have to hold on to that car for 10 years before you can sell it. So often it's not worth it for people. So it may be worth it for you if you want to import a new car and you're going to have it for 10 years. But don't be fooled by how great that benefit sounds, because for most people, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, next benefit. The amounts declared to obtain immigration status will be exempt from income tax. Next, 20% of transfer tax exemption for real estate acquired within a period of 5 years. So if you buy property within 5 years of having your visa, 20% of the transfer tax. And the transfer taxes are normally between 3 and 5% when you're closing on a property. You're exempt of 20% of those fees. And you're also exempt for import taxes for instruments or materials of professional or scientific practice. This is not going to be applicable to most people. So there are benefits to temporary residency, and I don't know that any of these are really as good of benefits as they sound, except maybe the first one, which is tax exemption on household goods. The real benefits of these residencies is they're good for 2 years. After the second year, you renew. After the third year, you can apply for permanent residency, which means that you don't need to keep renewing, and there's a number of other benefits. After 7 years, you get to apply for Costa Rican citizenship and a passport. For a lot of Americans right now that are kind of freaked out about what's going on in the US, this is great. This is a very attractive benefit. You get that second passport, especially if you have a family that you want to give them options, or you just want to have a backdoor if needed. This is a real benefit. And so you start working on that with getting these temporary residencies. Okay, that was a lot about temporary residencies. So again, long story short, good for 2 years. You renew after the second year. After the third year, you apply for permanent residency. After 7 years, you can apply for citizenship and get your second passport. The three main ways to do it are investor, rentista, and pensionado. And you apply from Costa Rica, and it's pretty easy. So we have some clients that aren't necessarily ready to move to Costa Rica, but they know that they will in the next few years, and they want to get their visas. They want to get that process started because it does take 8 to 12 months to get. So they might come down on a vacation or a scouting trip, and while they're here, they'll submit their visas applications, and then they'll go back to the US and live their lives for a few years. And meanwhile, in 8 to 12 months, they're going to get their visas. We also had a question about time requirements on temporary residencies, physical presence requirements. So let me get to that now. There's a lot of misconceptions. I've been hearing a lot lately that people are hearing you have to be in Costa Rica for 4 months on the rentista visa. This isn't true. They're actually, for these temporary residencies, investor, rentista, pensionado, there is no permanent physical presence requirement in Costa Rica. They want you to come once a year, but you can come for half a day and leave, and it's fine. So that's one of the real benefits of Costa Rica over other countries. So another country we work in is Portugal, for instance, and you need to be there 8 out of every 12 months. Costa Rica, you can just apply for your visa, you can have it, you just visit once a year, and that's it. And you can get your temporary residency. You will be paying into Caja, but that's kind of it. And you can keep on living in the US for the whole 7 years if you want, so you get your citizenship. So it's a way to work towards a second passport and have a lot of flexibility if you're not necessarily sure you want to be in Costa Rica right away. Cece, let me get to your question now before I start talking about the other visa type. Is it necessary to learn Spanish, or is English spoken widely enough to get by? It's a great question. Depends where you are. A lot of expats move down here and speak relatively little Spanish, and that's fine. There are parts of the country where there are plenty of expats, and there's plenty of catering to expats, and you can live your life in English, and it's not a problem. There are other parts of the country where it's going to make your life a lot easier to speak Spanish. In a few minutes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to look at a map together of the country, and I can help you understand where in the country is very popular for expats and where it's more likely that you can get by with just English. I'm going to take a sip of water. Excuse me. Okay. We've talked about the tourist visa. We've talked about the temporary residencies. Let me add, if you are thinking about having a child, if you have a child in Costa Rica, the child is automatically a citizen, and the parents of the child skip the temporary residency process and become permanent residents automatically. If you are thinking about having a kid anyway, this is a great immigration option. It's what Anna and I did ourselves. So we were exploring temporary residency options. We were going to probably do the investor visa. We were talking to an immigration attorney. This was several years ago. And it came up that we were thinking about trying to have a child. And the immigration attorney said, well, just wait, just have a kid. You skip the line for temporary residency. Your child's a dual citizen. That was very attractive to us for a lot of reasons. And the medical care we received, we felt was top notch. And so feel free to reach out to me if that is your situation and you would like more information about that, because we did it ourselves and can recommend it. Okay, third main visa route is digital nomad visa. This is not going to be applicable for everybody, but for some people it might be interesting. This visa is good for 1 year and can be renewed for a second year. This does not lead to permanent residency and citizenship. So if your goal is permanent residency and citizenship, then you want to go for one of those temporary residencies I mentioned before. The digital nomad visa, though, is designed to be much faster and easier and more economical to get. So we can typically get people approved in about 2 months, 6 to 10 weeks. It depends. It's a little out of our control because it's Costa Rican immigration. But the requirements is, if you're applying on your own, it's that you demonstrate you've made at least $3,000 a month over the last 12 months. If you're applying with dependents, it's $4,000 in the last 12 months. You don't need nearly as many papers to do it. We can manage that application for you. And so that's a really good option for people who aren't sure that they want to make the investment in temporary residency for the long term yet and want to just spend a year or two in Costa Rica to get out of wherever they are for now, or explore Costa Rica as an option. So digital nomad visa is a great option if that's your circumstance. Okay, great. In terms of dependents, we get a lot of questions about dependents on temporary residencies and the digital nomad visa, so I wanted to address it. Dependents, you can bring, so spouses are fine. What you'll need is an apostilled marriage certificate, and any document you're going to use for these processes need to be issued within 6 months of your application submission. So even if you have your original marriage certificate, it's going to need to be reissued within 6 months of your application submission, and it needs to be apostilled. Spouses, easy route to get approved as a dependent. Children under 18 can be dependents, no problem. Children over 18 cannot be dependents unless they are physically dependent on you. So then you're going to need some kind of medical letter, if your child has special needs, or, for whatever other circumstance, then we can get your child approved as a dependent. And then you can also get your parents approved as dependents if they are financially or physically dependent on you as well. This is a little easier case to prove. It's not as common, but it is possible. There was a related question. Can we work in Costa Rica on a visa? So in order to work in Costa Rica, you need to be taking a step back. If you're on a tourist visa, it is expressly forbidden to work for a Costa Rican company. If you are a temporary resident, you need to be hired by a Costa Rican company. It's going to be very hard to do because they have to prove that they couldn't hire from the local pool first. So unless you have a skill set that is exceedingly rare in Costa Rica, it's going to be difficult to get hired by a Costa Rican company. Once you are a permanent resident, you can work in Costa Rica. So that's another advantage. We work with some folks who are retired, but they want a side job to supplement their income. So getting started on your temporary residency early will allow you to get your permanent residency more quickly, which will allow you to work in Costa Rica and supplement your income if that is of interest. However, on any of these visas, you can work remotely. So we work with a lot of people who have online jobs or run businesses, and that's no problem. So on any of the visas, even if you have the pensionado visa, you can work online and make income in the US. And that brings us to our next question, which was about taxes. So this person asked, I have my own company in the US. What will my tax situation be like? So this is a great segue. So what's great about Costa Rica, one of the real advantages of Costa Rica over other countries that people move to, is that they do not tax you on income earned outside of Costa Rica. So that includes Social Security, that includes your pension, that includes income from your business or your job. So that's a great situation, right? You still have to file in the US. It's not, you may not need to file in Costa Rica. It depends on a few other circumstances. But you'll basically just file in the US and you'll pay federal tax in the US, but you're going to be eligible for certain benefits. There is a property tax in Costa Rica. So if you decide to buy property, you're going to pay about 0.25 to 0.5% of property tax. What is important to know, if you are a US expat living in Costa Rica, regardless of the visa situation, it will change your filing requirements in the US depending on the assets you have in Costa Rica. So there's something called an F bar. If you have assets totaling over $10,000 in Costa Rica, you need to file an F bar. This isn't hard. It's just something that needs to be done, and the penalties are severe. So, if you're going to move here, make sure that you are working with a US accountant that is familiar with expat taxes. We can recommend somebody to you if you need somebody. The next filing requirement to be aware of is called the FATCA. FATCA, it's not quite as hard and fast a rule as the FBAR, which is 10,000 assets, but it changes. But basically, if you have assets of over 100,000 in Costa Rica, check with your accountant in the US to see if you need to be filing. Again, penalties are extremely severe. It's not worth missing those filing requirements because you're going to pay like tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars just for missing those filing requirements. All right, I talked a lot. I gave you a lot of information. The next thing that I want to talk about, we have a question about where in the country is good for families. And so what I want to do is share my screen and we're going to look at the map together. And I'm going to talk about different parts of the country. I give you a lot of information, so please leave a question in the comments if you have any questions about any of the things that we just covered. So visas, taxes, working, anything like that. And meanwhile, I'm going to take another sip. Okay, great. So I'm going to try to share my screen. If it's not sharing, please let me know. Okay. Mary, I see your question about healthcare. Yes, we can get to that. That's a good question. Okay, so this is a map of Costa Rica. Many of you will be very familiar with this. What I'm going to do now is run through different parts of the country at a high level. And because we had received a question about where's good for families, and this is a question we get a lot of, where would be a good fit for me? And if this is a question that you have, it's something that we can help you with. So we offer 30 and 60-minute coaching calls. You get on a call with Anna, and she's great at asking you questions about where it is interesting for you and helping you kind of narrow in on places that could be a good fit. But I'm going to just do a quick run through to give you guys an overview, and I can take questions about specific areas, but hopefully this helps a little bit kind of give you a better idea of what different parts of the country are like. So the first part of the country that I'd want to highlight is the Central Valley, which is here. So San Jose, that's where the airport is. It's the capital city. San Jose itself is not that nice. And so we typically don't recommend to people to live in San Jose proper. But there's a lot of really wonderful towns around San Jose and neighborhoods. And what's nice about the Central Valley is it's up in the mountains, and so the weather is great. So a lot of Costa Rica is very hot, but the weather in San Jose is great. The air is a bit cooler. Just a very pleasant climate, and it's up in the mountains and it's very green. There's also in the Central Valley, the best hospitals in the country are here. And a lot of our clients are interested in accessibility to high quality healthcare. And we'll talk about healthcare later, but the best hospitals in the country are in the Central Valley. And so if you are prioritizing proximity to amenities and healthcare and an international airport, and also like the cooler weather, the Central Valley can be a great option. Places like San Rafael, Barva, Heredia, Santa Ana, Escazú are all really great like neighborhoods of the San Jose area. I know I'm going through it quickly and not giving you a lot of detail, but if you're interested, let's send us an email or connect on a call or sign up for a coaching call and we'll provide more details about it. These are great because they're basically in the larger San Jose area, but they're nice. These are generally upscale neighborhoods. One thing to know about the Central Valley is traffic can be an issue, but you can use Uber. So you don't need to own your own car if you live in the Central Valley. Even though I don't highly recommend public transportation, Uber works very well in this area. And you can get everything you need. So if you want to go to the movies or go to a nice restaurant or go to a ball game or go bowling, everything is here. A little a little to the west of San Jose, are towns called Atenas and Grecia. These are very popular with expats. So they say Atenas has the best weather in the world, and Grecia is also very nice. It's slightly more space than some of these areas. These have like small town feels, but you have really stunning views, and so it's good for people that want a little more rural but still access to the capital. And then further out is San Rafael and San Ramon. These are really wonderful towns, and there's a really great retirement community actually out here. Um, and so there's a lot of really great areas in the Central Valley, if that's what you're looking for. I want to minimize this and make sure you guys can hear me or can see the screen. Okay. Looks like this. All right. So coming down to the coast, because a lot of people want to live on a beach in Costa Rica. The closest beach to the capital is Jaco. This part of the country is called the Central Pacific. So it's basically Jaco to about Quepos, I would say. Many of you have heard of the national park called Manuel Antonio. So that's near Quepos. This whole coast is pretty great. There's a lot of surfing here. Este Rios is very popular, Playa Hermosa. Jaco was called the Las Vegas of Costa Rica. For a long time, it was considered a little seedier, but it's cleaned up its act. And this is the beach that a lot of Ticos go to on the weekends because it's about an hour from San Jose, or an hour and a half from San Jose. Further south, this is called the South Pacific. And if you've ever heard of the Whale Tail Beach, that's Marina Ballena. For my money, this is the prettiest beach in Costa Rica. It's pretty incredible. The town is Uvita, very popular with expats. Ojo Chal is also very popular. So there's a community kind of built into the hills here. And this coast is stunning. It's just further from things. So it's about 3.5 to 4 hours to San Jose. So if you're prioritizing access to medical and things like that, then this is probably not your best bet, but it's definitely worth visiting. There's also a really lovely town. This is the capital of this region. It's called the San Isidro de General or Perez de León. So this is a beautiful mountain valley town with really great markets and things. And you're only an hour from the beach. So a lot of expats choose to live up here as well. Okay. Coming up to the Nicoya Peninsula, which is this. This is really good for typically like digital nomads. There's some towns down here called Malpais, Santa Teresa, Montezuma. These are a little more bohemian, great surfing spots, very laid back, but remote. So this is, 2.5, 3 hours to Liberia, which is where the second international airport is and where hospitals are also. There are decent hospitals in Liberia, but they're not as good as the ones in the Central Valley. You also have this coast, which is called the Guanacaste Coast. So this is the most popular part of the country for American expats. It kind of looks like Southern California. It's got the cliffs. It's quite dry, but there's a lot of monkeys and things, and the beaches are incredible. And because it was so popular with expats, there's amenities. There's a lot of development here. So Tamarindo is the most popular town in Costa Rica for expats. But you also have upscale. This Playa Flamingo has a marina where you can have a boat. Nosara is this upscale, kind of beautiful beach town. Samara is a little bit of a younger crowd. And one of the reasons that these areas are so popular is because Liberia is here, And like I mentioned, there's a international airport here, so there's direct flights from Denver and Miami and LA and Washington, DC. And there's hospitals and big box stores, so they have an equivalent of like a Sam's Club here as well. We always visit it when we go to pick people up from the airport, and that's because we live on the lake. So this is also a very popular area for expats. This is called Lake Arenal. It's the biggest lake in Costa Rica. Many of you will have seen a picture of a volcano, and that's probably Arenal volcano. So we live in Nueva Arenal. On clear days, we can see the volcano. We chose it because the beaches are very hot. And when we drove up to visit this area, the temperature dropped about 10 degrees. You're a little higher up. It's very green. There's a beautiful lake here. It's a little more affordable. So we wanted to buy a home, and, we could afford a home up here. So there's Nueva Arenal, and then there's across the lake, there's Tronadora. And then there's expats all around here. And we feel very safe and we love it. A lot of people live in Fortuna as well. Last place I'd want to point out is the Caribbean. So the thing to note about the Caribbean, you can see there's this one highway here. So the Caribbean's about 4 hours away from San Jose and all the amenities there. So while there are clinics and things, it's remote. You're also far from the airport. And what you can see is there's this spine of mountains that runs down the country. And this side of the country is, fairly mountainous and hilly. You can see how flat it is over here. And so this side of the country is much flatter. The wildlife is incredible. So it's on this side of the country that you'll see just like sloths and trees in the wild, which is pretty cool. Limon is a port city, and Limon is a little dangerous. And so we never recommended people to stay in Limon. But Puerto Viejo is an amazing place to live. There's great snorkeling over here. You can ride on bikes up and down the beach. Really cool. The culture on this side of the country is different. So this is, Costa Rican proper, Spanish in its influence. The Caribbean side is very Afro-Caribbean. So the food is different. The architecture is different. The music's different. This is a really like neat area. And a lot of people choose to live over here because it's just so laid back and it's beautiful, but it is very hot and it is far from things. So there's also great national parks over here. So Manzanillo is really great. There's a cool park up here called Tortuguero, which is where which is where the turtles are born. And you can't actually drive there. You need to take a boat there or a plane. So that's where the trip if you're taking a vacation. I'm going to stop screen sharing and come back to the call. Okay. I'm going to follow up on these questions. Are hurricanes a concern? Costa Rica actually does well with hurricanes. We're typically pretty safe. If any side is going to get them, it's the Caribbean side because they typically form in the Caribbean. But Costa Rica is very rarely impacted by hurricanes, which is really nice. We do get tropical storms and things, but we're pretty lucky relative to places on the Gulf. And I'm from South Florida. So where we live, especially on this side of the mountains, not worried about hurricanes at all. There are earthquakes. So, we're on the same fault line as California. We get earthquakes every now and again. The building codes, so they build houses here with a lot of concrete and a lot of rebar. So we're not concerned about it, but it is something that happens. And if you're going to build your own house, you're going to want to make sure that you build it very sturdily. Hey, Jerome, no worries. I'm late, but how hard is it to rent or buy? That's a great question. Let me finish with these questions, and then we'll actually get into the rental market and property purchase. What is the socio-political climate like? Generally very safe. So Costa Rica, as many of you know, does not have a standing army. It's very laid back. They say that if there's like a fight in a bar, it's not Costa Ricans. We feel very safe. So, we used to live in East Africa and we often didn't feel safe. And here, Anna and our baby will walk around at night. We live in a small town. And one of the reasons we do is because we just feel very taken care of. And so overall, sociopolitical climate feels very stable, especially relative to the US right now. How hot typically? Hot. It's I don't know the degrees. If you live on one of the coasts, you're gonna need AC. More than hot, it's humid. This country is extremely humid. We are closer to the equator than many of you will be. Um, One of the nice things about the Central Valley is it's up in the mountains, and so it's not as humid. And the weather, to me, the weather there is perfect. Like you can wear a sweatshirt at night, but the coasts are hot. Even where we live right now, it's chilly, but a lot of the year we don't have AC here, which is one of the reasons that we like where we live. But we could use it sometimes. It's a hot and humid country. Flooding, yeah. So I don't know if anybody has been following the weather down here. There's been pretty crazy atmospheric events. And, Costa Rica always has rainy seasons. It's generally a pretty rainy country, which is why it's so lush and beautiful. But this year, this month particularly, I think we had 6.5 inches of rain yesterday, which is unusual. But, when you get that much rain, there are some landslides and flooding. Most of the places that our clients would live, it's not as big of an issue, but it can happen. Like it can happen like in places in the US as well. Jerome, you're in Phoenix. I don't know a lot about the weather in Phoenix. I think it's going to be more humid here than Phoenix, is what I would understand. Maybe not hotter, but definitely more humid. Okay. So I want to get to this question about healthcare, and I want to get to this question about rent and how hard is it to buy. Let's start with property purchase and rental, because I think that ties in nicely to this discussion about locations. The rental market in Costa Rica can be difficult to navigate because most property owners will be renting their apartments as kind of a side hustle business venture, their Airbnb being their place. And typically the best way to make money from Airbnb is very short-term vacation rentals. So there are plenty of short-term vacation rentals, but if you want something longer term, like 3 to 6 to 12 months, the market is a little more difficult to negotiate. There's ways to do it, but something that we help our clients with. But you're going to kind of hit your head on your desk if you're just reaching out to people, because the inventory that you can find online is not especially plentiful. I would also say that Costa Rica has very strong tenant laws. And so there's a lot of owners. If a tenant enters a property and is paying their rent, you legally can't kick them out for 3 years. So a lot of tenants are very cautious about renting their homes because they're worried that there's going to be people who take advantage of it. We do help people find rentals all the time. It is a process that we're familiar with. It's never easy, but it's something that we can help you with. In terms of buying a property, it works pretty much the same as you would expect in the US. Even before you have temporary residency, an expat has all the same protections as a Costa Rican. Generally, what you're going to do is, well, first of all, we always recommend renting before you buy. In Costa Rica, it is easy to buy, hard to sell. Don't tell any realtors I told you that. They're going to be, a lot of people will put a lot of pressure on you to buy property. What we recommend to clients is to come, live here for a while, live in a few different places, make sure it's where you want to be, make sure it's a good investment for you, because there's always going to be properties to buy. And it's going to be hard to liquidate your investment if you decide it's not right for you. What we hate to see is somebody takes a great vacation to a beach in Costa Rica and says, "Oh, I want a beach house in Costa Rica." And you come and you say, "Oh man, I really wish I was up in the mountains. I really wish I was on that beach town," because it's hard to liquidate that investment. Not impossible, but challenging. So rent before you buy. The property market, not that difficult to navigate. What you need to know, different from the US and other countries, is there's no MLS. And so it is kind of the Wild West. Typically, the buyer is going to pay the agent fees. You're going to pay about 5% in closing costs. What you're going to need to do is you agree on a pre-sale contract with an owner, so you'll negotiate with them. You need to make sure that the property has water rights and internet rights. There was a scam before that people would sell properties that didn't have any water rights. And if you didn't have water rights, there was basically nothing you could do. Now that's been tamped down on. So, but just make sure if you're negotiating for a property, there are water rights. You probably want to do I'm blanking on the word, like a survey of the property, because there are some tricks with that. There are a lot of scams. So feel free to reach out to us if you want some guidance on this, and make sure you're working with a reputable agency. some people will come to me and say, "Oh, well, this guy on Facebook told me there's a great property." Like that's a scam, probably. And if it's not, like you can still afford to take your time. So just take your time with it. We don't want to see anyone get, hurt. Sorry, I was talking about the purchase process. So you're going to get an escrow account. You will pay probably 10% upfront on a down payment. You'll get an escrow account for the rest. You'll probably have about 30 days due diligence. If the owner backs out, you get your 10% back. If you back out for whatever reason that is not explicitly stated in the due diligence, you lose your deposit. So make sure your due diligence is very clear. We wrote ours. We bought a property and we wrote it. We had a lot of stipulations. Owner financing for expats is very difficult. There is now one bank that will give it to you, but at terrible terms. Typically, what you're looking for is owner financing. So an owner will say, "Okay, pay me 50% down payment, and you can pay me the rest over 5 years." Something like that. That's typically how it works. So you're gonna need a larger chunk of cash than you would typically in the US if you're buying a property. Let me get to some of these questions. I'm a double transplant survivor, heart and kidney. Will I be safe? Yeah, I mean, there's great medical care especially in the Central Valley. I recommend living somewhere where you have access to that medical care. There's great hospitals in the Central Valley. We've used them ourselves. There's a lot of medical tourism in Costa Rica, and so the quality of care is really high. Ultimately, it will depend on what you need and if you can get it here, but mostly you can get anything you need here from a medical perspective. And something that we help our concierge clients with is tracking down the prescriptions they need, connecting with vetted specialists if they need. So, without knowing more specifics about your case, I would suggest yes, as long as you live near the kind of medical care that you need. Is there a period where you have to leave the country for immigration purposes? Yeah, Jerome, I had explained this earlier. I'm not sure if you had joined at that point. If you're on a tourist visa, yes, you need to leave before your tourist visa expires. We're going to post this video on YouTube. And so maybe you can go back and just listen to the first, I think I talked about the first 15 minutes, all the different visa options. Is women's healthcare an issue? Birth control, etc.? No. So Anna, my partner, gave birth here. We had a really wonderful experience. And from what she's described to me, she felt like really taken care of. And generally, mothers are like really highly valued here, and women are generally like looked after pretty well. She can access her birth control, no problem. She had a great OBGYN. And so in our experience, it's been great care in terms of women's healthcare. Jerome, so Central Valley is where my family and I should be looking. Jerome, if you're prioritizing medical care and access to medical care, yes, I would suggest looking in the Central Valley. And there's a lot of different parts of the Central Valley that could be a good fit for you, but in the Central Valley, somewhere where you can access one of those great hospitals. Okay, so there was a question earlier. What about healthcare? I think it's a great time to segue into that. Okay. So there's a few things to know about. Great. Jerome, I see your question. CC, I see your question. I will get to them. Let me first just talk about healthcare. I want to make sure I get to Mary's question, who's been waiting very patiently. Healthcare, as I mentioned, is considered great in Costa Rica. There's a lot of medical tourism here because the quality is so good and it's generally very affordable. So there are people who just come down and pay out of pocket, and the costs are much lower than you would expect in the US, and they won't bankrupt you, which is important. In terms, if you're going to live here and if you want to know about your kind of insurance situation, there's 3 or 4 things you should know. First is the CAHA system. So it's the Social Security system, but there's a public healthcare system called CAHA. As a temporary resident, and we talked about this earlier, you will get access to the CAHA public healthcare system. You will also pay into that system. The CAHA system is great for preventative care. It really focuses on preventative care. And there's like local clinics in every town, and you can go to the hospitals. And typically it's quite good for certain things. We almost always recommend to clients to also pair that with a private insurance if they can. So private is typically good for things like elective surgeries, And it's also just faster. So the Kyle system is a public healthcare system. You might wait 6 months for an appointment. Whereas with the private, and that's okay if it's not life threatening and if it's more preventative. If you can afford it, a private insurance is going to allow you to get care faster, do other things that maybe the Kyle system doesn't do as well or doesn't offer. There are different insurances. If you would like to work with us, we will either make recommendations or connect you to insurance brokers. There's also discount medical plans. So there's one called MediSmart, for instance, and they will give you discounts on physical therapy for this month. And there's for example, and there's a network of providers that work on these different discount plans, and they're always offering different deals. So I had knee surgery in Costa Rica, thought it was a great experience. Had never had knee surgery in the US, but I would recommend having knee surgery in Costa Rica. I thought it went great. And I used MediSmart to do all my scans of my knee. And then physical therapy. So my physical therapy appointments were ultimately like $20 out of pocket because I had this MediSmart plan. So there are ways to build yourself kind of a network of insurances that will cover you for what you need, make sure you're taken care of at much more affordable prices than the US. And that's a major draw of Costa Rica, is just more affordable and accessible medical care. Typically, medications are pretty available or something like it. So for our concierge clients, we will track down the medications you need and we can connect you to specialists. Mary, please let me know if you had any other questions about healthcare. I'm happy to provide more detail. Okay, so CC, LGBTQ rights. Yeah, so Costa Rica recognizes gay marriages. That's no problem. We have a lot of clients that are coming down and applying for visas that are same-sex couples, and that's no problem at all. And we have friends and clients that are members of the community, and everyone has reported feeling safe. We've heard of no issues, and from what I understand, it's a very accepting place for the LGBTQ community. Jerome, one more question, Zach. I have 2 dogs. Yeah, great. So let's talk about pets. Pets are one of the most common questions that we get. You can absolutely bring your pets. Let's start with cats. Cats are pretty easy. As long as your pets are under 20 pounds, including the soft carrier, they can fly in cabin with you. That's no problem. There's things that you need to do on the US side of things. Specifically, you need to get a USDA certified vet. Before COVID, a lot of vets were USDA certified. Since COVID, a lot of them gave it up. And so it sounds simple to get a USDA certified vet, but a lot of them aren't anymore. So you want to make sure your veterinarian is USDA certified. Why does that matter? Because 2 weeks before you fly on your flight, your USDA certified vet needs to submit USDA paperwork. And there's a certain way they do it, and they need certain certifications. And so that's really important. You don't need to get your pets microchips to bring them to Costa Rica, but we typically recommend it for kind of safety purposes. And there are a number of vaccines. So all pets need rabies. Cats, I'm not going to read them all, but I don't even know how to read some of those. Rhino, triple, blah, blah. Anyway, we have a checklist. If you decide to work with us, we'll give you a checklist. We're going to help you navigate that. Cats are easy. Dogs are not hard, but there's more things to know. So if your dogs are under 20 pounds, including a soft carrier that can ride in cabin, a lot of airlines used to allow you to check your dogs as baggage, but they no longer do. Only Alaska Airlines, which flies from the West Coast, does. Well, they were iffy for a little while, but I think they mostly do. Then you're going to basically you buy an extra bag. And so if flying Alaska Airlines is an option, that's great. As far as I'm aware at this stage, no other airline allows you to check your dog as baggage. What does that mean? That means that you're going to have to ship them either as freight. So a company like DHL or Avianca do freight forwarding flights. And that's all very doable. It's just expensive. So you're going to probably pay a few $1,000s per dog. What's nice, or you can do, there's private charter. Those flights are going to be between like $6,000 and $8,000 per pet. You would fly with your pet on the plane. Makes it much easier, but financially that's not an option for a lot of people. But know that it is an option if you have the means. There's no quarantine in Costa Rica. So, if you've done everything correctly, show up to Costa Rica, they have to see It's called Sanasa. They go through Sanasa here, and you can normally pick up your pet 2 to 3 hours after you've cleared customs yourself. There is a pet relocating company that we work with that can deliver your pet to you somewhere in the Central Valley as well. So 75 pounds, Jerome, it's probably going to be freight forwarding unless you can fly Alaska. There are often, of course, breed restrictions. So snub nosed and certain other breeds. Pit bulls, sometimes they won't let in, depending. Um, but those are all details that we'd be happy to talk about with you on our call. Okay, so we have about 3 minutes. The last question I really wanted to make sure I got to was somebody had asked, what are the best places to live for families with young children? Are there any international schools? I've covered, where in the country is good for different things, and so I won't get back into that too much. But there are a lot of great schools for expat families. Typically, there's about 4 categories. So there's the public schools, and residents can attend public schools, but they're going to be all in Spanish, and often they're not extremely well resourced. So while it is an option, um, a lot of expats don't choose to send their kids to public schools because it's not necessarily the quality of the education that you may be looking for. Um, there's private schools. So those, your tuition might be 5,000, maybe 10,000, 15,000, but they're often bilingual. They're going to be a combination of expats and TICOs, which is great. There's also international schools, and international schools are aligned to international curricula. So if you're going to expect to go back to the US or want your kid to attend, American university, international schools make a lot of sense because the curriculum that they're using maps onto what you would need to transfer it to if you went back to the US. And then homeschooling is legal in Costa Rica. It's up to the parent to manage the curriculum, but there are online programs like Khan Academy or Time for Learning. So there's a lot of great school options. This would be a longer and more detailed conversation. So, feel free to reach out to us and we can talk about schools that might be a good fit for you. But Central Valley has a lot of really great schools. There's also some really great schools on the Guanacaste coast. There's some in the South Pacific. And so that's a longer, more detailed question, but just at a high level, yeah, there's great schools here, and we can help you find a good situation for you. Well, great, guys. So we have about 1 more minute. I've talked a lot. What I wanted to do was share a little bit more information about Start Abroad. So we are as I mentioned, we are a full-service international relocation company. What I want to do is share my screen and just show you our Costa Rica services, just so you get an idea of how we can help you. What you won't see on this page is that we offer 30 and 60-minute coaching calls. We charge $70 for the 30-minute and $140 for the 60-minute. That will be with Anna. She's my better half and just really great at helping people think through where might be a good fit for them. We've helped a lot of people plan their trips. If you're going to take an exploratory trip, if you want to dig into medical or visa options or anything like that, I'd recommend scheduling a coaching call. But let me share my screen and show you our services. One second. So this is our Costa Rica services page. Many of you might have already seen it. We offer different levels of service. So we have concierge relocation package. We ask for 70% upfront and 30% after you've moved to the country. This is all the bells and whistles. So this is you're assigned a dedicated relocation specialist who's going to be very hands-on and available throughout your move. It also includes visa application assistance. We'll help you buy a car. We didn't have time to talk about car purchase, but that is the Wild West here as well. But we can help you with that. We'll help you find a rental. Get you picked up at the airport. Get your utilities set up. So this is everything, all the logistics, and also all the things to make your move as smooth as possible. We have a residency package, which is this is the logistics of the move. So this is visa, car, rental, and some calls with a specialist. But if you don't need all the hand-holding of concierge, the residency relocation package is a great option. We work with an immigration attorney, so this includes the legal fees for the main applicant. We also process digital nomad visas ourselves, which helps keep costs down. So we offer a digital nomad package. So this is great for young families or couples that are moving and want to live here for a year or two. So we'll manage your digital nomad visas, help you find a rental, car purchase, airport pickup, a number of calls. Um, I'm not going to go through all of our services, but I wanted to share a little bit more about what we can offer. We are very tailored to clients. There's no boilerplate solution when you're moving abroad. Um, let's say that there's 10 different categories that you need to figure out when you're moving. So it's a visa, and what do I do about a car, and what do I do about housing, and what do I do about my phone and banking. What we want to do with our clients is help you understand your options for every one of the categories, make the best decision for your situation of every one of your options, and help you execute in a way that saves you time, money, and stress. And so we would love to work with you. If you decide to move to Costa Rica, we offer free 15-minute consultations, which you can find, which you can sign up for on our website, or you can just reach out to me directly. I'm happy to just be in touch and answer your questions. My email is Zach, Z-A-C-H, at startabroad.com. I'm going to put it in the question or in the chat. So just feel free to be in touch. I would love to speak with you. We would love to work with you. And thank you guys so much for your time. Cece, I'm sorry we didn't get to your last question, but feel free to just shoot me an email. I'm happy to discuss that with you. And real pleasure being here with you guys tonight. And I'll look forward to being in touch soon.